Hello, this is Nate Fenson doing a presentation about classroom management for class EDU 4080. What we have on the screen right now is four examples of different types of classroom management. On the left side, we have terrible classroom management, one amazing movie. And on the right side, we have two different variations of amazing classroom management. On the top right, we have all the students actively volunteering, wanting to participate. And on the bottom right, we have everyone engaged, ready to learn, ready to respond in the way the teacher wants them to respond, waiting for those cues from the teacher to get the desired result. When you have a managed classroom, there are several key aspects of it. The best thing about a managed classroom is there are very little points throughout the day where time is wasted. Instead, you're replacing that wasted time with learning time. The best way to make it so that no time is wasted is to make it so that the students know what to do and when to do it. This creates students wanting to do work, and it makes it so that the classroom is just a relaxed, pleasant, conductive to learning environment. And that learning environment makes it so that all these other things can happen so much more effectively. I love this picture. This picture shows a whole bunch of crazy concepts, neatly organized and ready to go is the most important thing. When she wants to start teaching about the world map, she has a world map ready to go on the wall. When she needs to do the activity with building blocks, they're already ready in the middle of the room, top left of the flowers. When she wants to do an activity with the different maps and nationalities of the world, or she just needs to mention one of the nationalities, she can literally go to all the flags, pick up the flag and say, this nationality is this is what we're talking about. She has all sorts of props ready to go, but the nice thing about this is everything's in their place. Everything looks neat, and it makes it so that the students feel like the teacher knows what they're doing. To get that initial response of students knowing what you're doing, you want to first start out with a professional introduction, one that's inviting, one where the students want to introduce themselves to you, they understand who you are, what class you're teaching, what classroom this is, and they see you as a professional just by the way you're dressed. When you're doing this introduction, you want to make sure there's a ton of nonverbal language going on. You want to be smiling, reaching out to the student, and you want to make them feel as comfortable as you can when they're entering and in your classroom. Before you talk about assigned seating, you want to talk about arranged seating. Arranged seating can take any number of different types. On the board, there's 5 different examples of these types, the most standard one being in the middle, where it's a grid format where everyone has their own space and we're all spread out. This usually isn't the best setup, but it is the best in several different cases, like giving a test, giving a lecture. However, there are several other setups. The banquet setup on the top left shows arranged seating setup that is best used for group work. The bottom left shows what's best for a lecture. The bottom right shows what's best for student-peer communication. The top right also shows another standard version of the grid layout where they're set in groups of 2 next to each other. Part I like most about arranged seating is there is no best. Even though the bottom left one I said was best for lecture style, that word best is interpreted by the teacher. Some teachers might even say that the U-shaped base is the best for lecturing because that means everywhere they look, they always have the students looking at them. The other key thing about arranged seating is you need to be able to have a dynamic classroom that changes to fit the needs of the current lesson for the day. You want to be able to change from a grid setup to a banquet setup and then back to a grid setup if you're doing it that way, because then when the students need to work in groups, we quickly move the desks into those groups and then we break back out when we're done. These procedures need to be set in place, ready to go so that time isn't wasted every time we want to turn into a group. We just simply tell the students, let's get into our groups, and the students know to set up the desks accordingly. On the bottom left, we have multiple groups of multiple sizes. On the top right, we have communication. The nice thing about this communication on the top right is that the big fish can be a student or a teacher. When I saw this picture, this just spoke words about assigned seating. We have all sorts of different things going on in this setup. This is what a standard classroom would look like if there was no arranged seating or assigned seating. We have everyone sitting where they want, doing what they want to do. People sitting with friends, doing off-task activities. They're playing on their cell phones. They're playing the video game consoles. They're having food fights. They're talking sports. They're talking to their friends. Just everything about this setup is messy, and that's why I love it. Because you want to make assigned seating so that this doesn't happen. There's all sorts of different ways to do this, listed on the left. However, to make it so that it works for your classroom literally depends on your classroom, and you want to change it so it fits best. There is no best way to assign seats, but there are different ways to do it depending on what your goal is. Do it! Do it now!
Do it! Do it now!
Again, we want to do it now so that when we start the class, the students are working before the bell even rings. We want to start the learning process. The second they walk in the door, they're looking at the board thinking, this is what we're doing for the day. Okay, I got to go do this. I'm going to get seated, get my paper and pencil out, and get to work. In order for this to happen, we have to have that procedure ready to go. On the bottom left, we have A to B to C. A, the students walk in the room. B, the students see the activity. C, the students start the activity. We do not want to teach, like on the bottom left, that little geometry problem right there, where sometimes we go from A to B, then to C, then to D, then to E. Sometimes we just go straight from A to E. Sometimes we go A, B, C, E. Sometimes A, B, D, E. We're jumping all around the place, and the students are just as confused as all of us looking at that picture right there. The best way to tell if a teacher is an efficient teacher is to see how, but more importantly, when the teacher takes attendance. If the teacher takes the attendance the first thing of the day, you can already tell that this teacher is wasting valuable time. And the other thing is, they're already planning themselves to fail. Because the second we start class, if we say, oh, you got to stop now, I got to take attendance, I got to do this administrative task, and not teach you, so just hold on, just talk amongst yourselves, make a classroom disruption, so that then I'm going to have to calm you down, get back to teaching. We're already setting up ourselves to create a situation that we don't want. Instead, if we set up a digital copy of the seating chart with their pictures, with their names, I can quickly look, okay, where are the empty seats? Those are the empty seats. I'm going to mark those seats absent and get going. But I'm going to do this 2/3, 1/3, all the way into the classroom when there's some downtime, so I can address the students first and then take care of those tasks. On the right, we have what I like to call old school method of taking attendance. We make the students responsible for taking their own attendance by taking the picture themselves and moving it over to the here side. Then, when they're walking into the room, they move the picture over, they take their seat. The teacher only has to look at the red side to see who's not there. And then the efficient, effective teacher has a student who finishes first get the opportunity to arrange the pictures back over on the not here side, resetting itself for the next day. They're using an administrative activity as a reward to the students, tricking them into doing our job for us. That is the definition of an effective teacher. With being an effective teacher, you need to have effective grading. There's two different styles of grade books that are described in the book. There's the one line, which we're used to on the bottom left, where we have the name, the assignment, and their grade, the next assignment, and their grade for that one. However, by doing it this way, we can't see the whole big picture of the student. On the right, we have a hard copy of the 3-line grade book, where we see, okay, we have student A. Was he absent or tardy? How many days did they show up? How many days absent were they? And how many days tardy were they? And then on the right, we have a whole series of assignments, what they did, what they got, and it's all there, all in one place. So I can quickly look at one student, see how they did. I have my totals all the way on the right to see, okay, how do they do overall with their grades? I have averages further over to the right. We just don't see that because of the screenshot. I wanted to zoom in on the 3 important parts there. This gradebook then, instead of reflects grades, which is on the left, we reflect the learning that's taking place on the right. With all discipline plans, there's two different types. There's the proactive type, where that's the effective teacher. Proactive teacher is using all those attributes to prevent the need to take discipline action. In a reactive sense, where the ineffective teachers are waiting for something bad to go wrong and then fixing it. The good old phrase, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, definitely comes into play here. We're talking about discipline plans here when we're talking about this, and there are three different types that they talk about. There's one where it's teacher in charge, the next is student in charge, and another one, it's a blended where both the student and the teacher are in charge. We're going to first talk about the teacher in charge. When I'm thinking teacher in charge, I'm more thinking like military, by the books. This is what you need to do. The class is more teacher directed. Teacher has his hands on everything, and the students usually aren't offered choices. By doing it this way, overall the climate of the classroom is tense, has limits, and definitely without freedom. This would be great for a math class, a young group of students where they need to be told what to do in order to get things done, and pretty much any class where the teacher wants there to be a specific mood set by the teacher for their classroom. Next is student in charge, which I personally like to do, that the choices that they make have consequences and rewards, and then they slowly learn, okay, if I want to do the right thing, I'm going to get this reward, and then they see over time that making the right choice is the best reward all in itself. The teacher listens to the students, to the class. However, by doing this, it creates a very chaotic classroom, a ton of freedom for the students, usually without limits. I love this because this is what's going to happen in real life, where the students start eliciting for help, they start asking for what they want, and it makes it so that the discipline happens when it should. Now, if we take these two discipline plans and blend them together, we're going to have one where both the teacher and the students are in charge. What I'm talking about here is the teacher tells the student to go to the power center. It's not the corner of the room like it used to be with the dunce cap. It is an area in the room where the student can then figure out what they did wrong, what they should have done, and how it should be resolved. And then the teacher comes in and says, okay, what's the deal? We're going to solve this together, figure out the best plan of action, then we're going to take that plan of action. This allows the student to quietly take a step back, figure out that action plan, and create a solution to the problem, which that's what I love on the top left picture, is because it shows that every problem can have a different solution, but one tailored to that student. Obviously, we're not going to let students listen to music the entire class, but if a student usually acts up in groups that gets too loud, putting headphones in during those student groups and having the student work alone, that might be the perfect solution that's created by the teacher and the student working together to create that action plan. Once we start learning as a teacher that students are very powerful all in themselves, we have to figure out the best way to manipulate the students to do the things that we want to do. We can discipline their behavior, and we can create procedures to what we want done. If we want the students to walk in and then do A, B, C, we can create a procedure to make sure that happens. By doing this, we have to then figure out, okay, yes, I can have them do C, but is C busy work, or is it learning? A learning activity where they actually are involved in the process, where thoughtful, meaningful work is being done instead of just, okay, 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 plus 2 is 4, 3 plus 2 is 5. they're doing a ton of work there where there's not much meaningful learning going on. They're just doing repetition after repetition, and there isn't thought process going on there. What I love about this is once we get to the point where our procedures are in place, the discipline actions are well known, and they actually understand them, and they decide to behave because they like the rewards more than the consequences, a classroom can actually function without the teacher present, where peers are teaching peers, and they're learning from each other and growing together as a classroom. And that's ideally, being an effective teacher, what we want our end goal to be. We want the students to be doing our job so that we can handle the special situations with the time that they require. To get this done, we need to rehearse over and over and over again what we want them to do. Again, the good old phrase, practice makes perfect, is what we want to do. We want to practice the students walking in the room, starting the lesson all on their own until they have it as a habit instead of a process of the teacher getting them to do what they need to do. Again, the end goal here is what I love about this picture, is the teacher should be relaxed enough to pick up on the small nuances that are going on in the classroom. Once they start doing these good behaviors, we want to reinforce it so that the dog knows not to eat the treat till they're told to, because they know it's worthwhile to wait. As the good old phrase, everything good is worth waiting for. The book on the left in the yellow, I actually love this because once we reinforce that first top left, what I like to call the gerbil circus, is when the gerbil's always running uphill. Once we teach them to get ahead, they learn that, oh wow, I can take a step above where I normally was. And then once they see that, I can just run on the top and be then flying basically in that last picture, where they see that once we know the procedure and have repetition to drive it home, we can ace the class without even trying. Overall, we want to increase the amount of learning opportunities and improve those learning opportunities to get the best result. There's cooperation and competition. Both should be in the classroom. The competition, however, should be with oneself, always striving to do better than what they did. And the students should be working together on the left in order to get the end goal the way they want. The students working together and the students competing against themselves and not each other is what has those building blocks of trust. There are several ways to group students together in order to achieve this, and sometimes we need the mixed group, sometimes we need just the reds, and sometimes we need to mix up the reds and the yellows but keep the greens just with the greens. And that concludes my presentation about classroom management. I hope we learned a lot. I hope that we realized that we don't want to be like the movies in the bottom left, where we're literally running from A to B in our classroom just to try to not manage one student, but fix an issue with one student. Once we get to where we're actually managing the classroom, we don't have problems on the top left where we don't know what to do and the students are having the time of their life because they're not learning. We want to be completely in control of the situation, like on the bottom right, where the students are actively engaged and we're all ready to learn. Thanks so much for listening to the presentation. I hope we all, as teachers, continue to grow and continue to learn.